This is Andi Purewal for Boxing Social in association with Betfred. We're in London and I'm joined by Dan Hardy. Dan, firstly, how are you?
Really good, really good. Good to be here.
Good to hear. Now, obviously, you're making your first entrance into the boxing ring, your first fight in 10 years against Diego Sanchez, who's also obviously of an MMA background. Dan, why now? Why have you finally made that crossover? Not necessarily crossover, but your return to just fighting?
Well, I mean, it's been coming for a while now. You know, I went through all the medical clearance. That took me a few years to do because I was so busy with commentary and analysis. You know, they kind of kept me busy. So I got all the medical stuff done, and then there was discussions about fighting. The UFC wanted me to announce when I was fighting, and they wanted to make a big deal out of it. They put a few opponents my way, which they weren't really the kind of people that I wanted to be facing. And then the pandemic happened, and that kind of slowed everything down. Then Fight Island was happening, and I was back and forth to there. But the idea of fighting has never left my head. And I've always been a huge boxing fan. I've always trained boxing. It was always a supplementary session in my training camps anyway, working with really high level amateurs and pros in and around Nottingham. I actually used to do pads right before Tyson Fury used to do his pads at the gym as well. So I'd be wrapping my hands watching him do it. I've always been in and around boxing, and the fact that I've done every combat sport but I've never boxed, it makes sense that this is the obvious thing to start with. And then after this, I could maybe look at doing another boxing match or Muay Thai, kickboxing, maybe back to MMA. I mean, there are a lot of options, but as a starting point, and an opponent like Diego, ideally, boxing's great, loads of fun.
What should the fans expect between yourself and Diego come July 2nd, Dan?
They're going to expect a fight. They've got to expect a fight. I mean, I know, of course, it's an exhibition match. We've got big gloves on, but Diego and I are fighters. That first bell rings, and we're going to try and stop each other. That's the whole idea of us stepping in there with one another. 16-ounce gloves, boots on, in a ring. There are lots of different things for us to both take into account. We're both boxing for the first time, and I like the fact that we're both MMA guys that are stepping into a different rule set together. Big respect for Diego taking the fight as well. Obviously, MMA is his thing, and that's where his strength is. But I just think this is going to be a lot of fun, and I think that we're both at the stage of our career where we've really got nothing to lose.
Dan, as we said earlier on, it's been 10 years since you retired from MMA. So since then, I say retired, but obviously you haven't fought since then. Are you not necessarily concerned, but will ring rust be on show? Or are you entering this fight as an exhibition, or do you want to put on a bit of a performance? Do you want to show if you look good, maybe there is another bout out there, maybe there's a professional boxing bout, not just an exhibition? Is it something that's playing on your mind at all? Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I think this is a good opportunity for me to A, get in shape, and B, show people that I'm in shape and that I'm still sharp. Like, I haven't taken any damage over the last 10 years. I've spent the last 10 years basically studying combat sports every day, every hour of the day. I obsess about it. So I've got a lot of things I want to put into practice. I'm going to see how I feel. I might do it and have a good time and then decide I don't want to do it again. I think that's very unlikely. I think most likely I'm going to want to put smaller gloves on, or maybe no gloves at all at some point in the future. But as a starting point, to be able to throw myself into the ring with someone like Diego and big gloves, and honestly, Ricky Hatton's the main event. He was an inspiration for me when I was growing up. To be able to share a card with him, the Manchester Arena is a place I'm familiar with from fighting at UFC 105 against Mike Swick. It's a good arena, good memories there. Manchester's a fantastic city to fight in. It just all made sense.
I know you won't want to look beyond Diego, but I know previously, and at the end of last year, there was rumours of a potential bout between yourself and Tyron Woodley before he went in to face Jake Paul for a second time. Is he somebody you'd consider to step in the ring with, provided July 2nd goes to plan?
This could have been Tyron Woodley here today. He could have been sitting on the press conference table. He turned it down. He didn't want it. I don't know whether it's because of his last fight and maybe he needs to take some time away. Maybe he's just decided he doesn't have that fire to compete anymore. And I respect him regardless. He didn't want to fight, and the offer was put to him. So that's that. I'm at peace with that. We'll see what happens in the future. I think there are a lot of good options in combat sports generally. I've had a few interesting names put forward, not only for boxing but for kickboxing, Muay Thai, MMA. So I think this is a good. This is my opportunity to prove to people that I am in shape and I am ready to go. When people see me against Diego, they'll realise that I'm coming to fight. And yes, it's an exhibition match, but when I drop in with 16-ounce gloves on, they'll think to themselves, "Good thing he wasn't wearing the 4s."
Dan, as you mentioned earlier on, you used to get your hand wrapped when Tyson was working out on the pads. We saw him stop Dillian Whyte in the 6th round last night at Wembley Stadium. What did you make of his performance?
I think he's outstanding. I think he's outstanding. You know, his ability to control the fight all the way through. His boxing craft is incredible. You know, fighting inside, fighting at range. He can stand and trade with the best of them. He's got footwork for days. You know, he's got such a high fight IQ as well, and you can see that coming through in his style. And, you know, he's a success story, just like Ricky was talking about at the press conference. I think that's something else that helps people gravitate towards him. You know, he's a unique individual, and we're all privileged to be able to watch him fight live.
He's spoken about retirement being next for him. Again, we have to kind of take everything with him.
This is incredible. I can't believe he's fighting again. This is
Me neither.
we've been waiting really. We've been waiting for this. This is the best mind in MMA. Could be the best mind in boxing. You need to get into some boxing stuff as well. Why don't you do that?
Maybe I should. Maybe that's the next stage.
Maybe that is next stage, but this is incredible. I can't believe he's going to fight Diego Sanchez. And you know what it is? It's almost a bit upsetting though that it's not an MMA fight. You would want to see an MMA fight between those two as well, but Diego's got hands. If you saw the Kevin Lee fight, you'd realise he's got hands. Kevin Lee's still very serviceable. We know that he's got hands. It's going to be a good matchup, isn't it? It's going to be a good matchup. And you know they're going to want one more. I don't believe for a second that Dan's going to come and look, he's saying no. There's no way he's having just one. And this is what it does. It gets the juices flowing. He's in good shape. What weight's at?
I'm 185.
Yeah?
I'll be lower than that, though.
Really? You think?
I'm coming in light, yeah, I'm coming in
he fought
light.
at 170. So the fact he's even talking about coming that light, that means you're still in shape.
I am in shape. I'm coming in light. I want to be light. I want to be ready to step on the scales under the weight that Diego's coming at. I want him to have the size advantage.
I like that. Just being fair. Got to tip the balance a little bit. Can I ask you one question? Sorry, I was taking over this. Hamzat Chimaev, obviously your former weight class.
Yeah.
Gilbert Burns, did we see more questions answered? Are you looking at him now as a guy that's ready for Kamaru Usman potentially?
I don't think he's ready for Kamaru yet. I wouldn't mind seeing him fight Colby. You know, I think that would make sense. I don't think we've seen any kind of exposure from Chimaev. I think that's what people were talking about after the fight. I think if anything, we saw how good Gilbert Burns was, and even I underestimated Burns because I know how good Chimaev is. I've seen him dismantle guys that most people would struggle with. And I think to be honest, you know, you see Andreas Michael in the corner. He was losing his mind yelling at him because Chimaev wasn't fighting a smart fight. He was coming there to war. I think he could have made it easier for himself. And Gilbert Burns took advantage of the moments where he was able to get in the fight. I'm excited for Chimaev. I think he's only just getting started. And you've got Darren Till training you striking as well now. You know, his Muay Thai game's going to come up. Scary individual.
Scary. I told you. How good was that?
Oh, brilliant, yeah, that was brilliant.
I told you, how good was that? Imagine that in boxing. We need it. Dan, I'm going to leave you guys. Dan, really appreciate it. Thanks a lot, man. Thank you.
Dan has actually a great little segment there. Just to kind of circle back to where we was at and talk about Tyson Fury. Speaking about exhibition bouts with yourself, he's mentioned retirement. Man got in the ring last night, a certain Francis Ngannou. For someone who's still as heavily involved in MMA as what you are, do you think we see Tyson Fury and Francis Ngannou next, whether it be in a boxing ring or in an octagon?
I think we will. I mean, both of these guys are keen. There's a massive amount of money to be made. You know, Ngannou's in a situation where, you know, by December he's going to be out of his UFC contract if he decides to. I also think if the UFC are smart, they're going to realise how much money there is to be made in co-promoting this. You know, Dana's a big boxing fan. He will have been watching Tyson Fury's last fight, and he would have been excited to think about a matchup with Ngannou. He just wants to make sure he's getting his piece of the pie, and as long as they can figure that deal out, this fight has to happen. Some kind of hybrid rules, why not? I mean, we saw Muhammad Ali fighting Antonio Inoki a few years ago, a long time ago, and you know that was a really odd one. But like, these are two strikers. It's going to be a very different matchup. It's just got to happen at this stage.
Don't get me wrong, I know if it was to be in an octagon, Francis would be a heavy favourite because of his background, but what chances, if at all, if that was to happen in there, would you give Tyson?
I'd give him a good chance. I'd give him a really good chance. Here we go. The Ricky Hatton band's out. I'd give him a really good chance. I mean, the reality is he's a fighter. You know, he's a fighter. He's a boxer because that's what he does. But he's a fighter because that's his instinct, that's his culture. And, you know, you talk to John Fury, that man's a cage fighter in his heart. Like, you could put him in any kind of rule set and he's going to be lethal. And that will transfer over to Tyson. I think he's going to be really, really valuable in mixed martial arts if he decides to have a go.
Well, Dan, I think that's time for us to leave it there. It's been a pleasure to talk to you first time. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.